started, can I just ask, over the last couple of weeks, what has been the most out there conspiracy that you have seen around the Charlie Kirk assassination?
One of the ones that I've seen that I think is kind of interesting and actually coming more from the left is that Charlie Kirk and his family are a psyop, that they aren't actually a real family and that they may be involved with the Freemasons as well.
Yeah, the one that I was really intrigued by had to do with that he wasn't even there. He was being projected as a hologram. And if he had been there, he may have ended up being trapdoored through some kind of underground tunnel.
I was actually at a conspiracy conference in Ireland in real life a couple of weeks ago. They had a tarot reader from Canada there, and she did a tarot reading. And the first question she was asked by someone in the audience from Ireland was Charlie Kirk really dead? And so she went and pulled her cards, and it turns out that he's not dead. And that, in fact, wasn't Charlie Kirk in the university being shot, but someone else.
I think conspiracies are often trying to give a balm to people during confusing events. They're a way for people to make sense of what's going on. And so it makes sense that folks would turn to tarot or turn to elaborate holograms to try to process what was going on.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this before. Tupac, Biggie, Elvis, Charlie Kirk, this idea that the people haven't really died. You can't believe your eyes in this case, but also that you can't believe government, you can't believe anything that you see or read, which is where you start to see the repetitive types of conspiracy theories come in. Not just Freemasons, which is a well-known trope, but also that Israel had something to do with it, or this was a military psyop from inside the government in some way to try to produce a martyr.
And we've literally seen President Trump and others calling Charlie Kirk a martyr.
He's a martyr now for American freedom.
So are there examples, do you think, from the past where we can see clearly that conspiracies from decades, centuries ago can also be applied to what's happening today?
So famously with the JFK assassination, there was always this claim of a second shooter, or the shot itself was something that never could have been made. And immediately after Kirk's assassination, you saw people sneaking back onto the campus of this university late at night and filming the area and trying to themselves see if that shot could be made from the top of the building to where Kirk was sitting. And so this notion of the impossible shot or the magic bullet is a tale that we've been through before.
That's an interesting point. And with JFK, there was the controversial theory that a second shot came from the grassy knoll. And similarly, videos now claim that Charlie Kirk would have been shot from a nearby window or balcony.
This would 100% line up with the actual shot from the backside of Charlie,
which is totally improbable. And of course, Tyler Robinson and Lee Harvey Oswald have both been labelled as patsies or scapegoats.
Well, even when we talk about Charlie Kirk's assassination potentially being a hologram, right? That's just a version of a false flag conspiracy theory, which we've seen with many different assassination attempts, from JFK to even the assassination attempt against President Trump during the 2024 election. We had prominent voices on the left suggesting that this might be a false flag to bolster his election chances.
There's a lot of claims that perhaps the deep state or others within the actual MAGA sphere had used Charlie Kirk as a sacrifice, and that it was to kick off this idea that Antifa and the radical left are the real perpetrators of mass violence. And we've seen similar things like this happen in the past, particularly when Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. There was a lapse of security that allowed that to happen. There was also claims that Booth had actually escaped, and that the person that was caught was actually a cadet that looked like Booth, and he was quickly executed.
Right, and one popular conspiracy theory at the time accused elements within Lincoln's own government, specifically the radical Republicans like Edwin Stanton, of somehow aiding Booth to remove a conciliatory Lincoln in order to impose harsher Reconstruction punishments on the South. That to me feels like a 19th century version of a deep state conspiracy.
There's also, of course, conspiracies around the end of the Romanov dynasty in Russia. People still believe today that Prince Princess Anastasia got out somehow, and there have been investigations into different people who claim they're Anastasia and their ears and their DNA on the Freemasons. There's a huge community online that is now claiming that Erica Kirk is secretly a Freemason and she didn't give birth to her children because there have never been any pictures of her pregnant, or she doesn't show her children's faces. Well, as somebody who's received online harassment, I can understand why she doesn't show her children's faces.
What Nina's saying is very true. One actual disinformation story that circulated very quickly after Kirk's murder was that his wife and children were there, and they weren't. So this story that
I actually fell for that one.
Yeah, his story that his daughter was running towards him really tugs on the heartstrings. It's hard to believe someone would make up that kind of detail.
Let's talk about X a little bit, because that's where a lot of these conspiracies begin. I was looking back to September 10th when this happened, and I was trying to find when these conspiracies started. And I found a post, I think less than an hour after Kirk had been officially declared dead, blaming Israel for his death. And it didn't get much engagement. And loads of these posts were posted, but not much engagement. Within hours, though, they began to go viral. Can I ask you, how does something like that go viral? How does it get to the point or break containment from X to the point where the Israeli Prime Minister has to post a video online denying that Israel had anything to do with the shooting? How does that happen?
So in this case, with pushing this conspiracy theory that Israel was involved, you had a specific actor like Candace Owens, who was close to Charlie Kirk. It's someone that is familiar to the Turning Point USA crowd, someone that is quote unquote trusted within those circles. And she really came out in full force to make these associations.
The very day before Charlie Kirk died, he expressed that he thought he was going to be killed.
What she's been able to establish has been very controversial, but at the same time, she's starting to prove it out that there was this fissure with Charlie Kirk and Israeli donors where she had received a text message, and a lot of people denied the existence of these text messages until she published them. She claims to have more. But when you think about the actors behind this, is that you need some kind of protagonist to get the ball rolling. And then it moves from X over to YouTube, where she's primarily doing her nightly show. Then it's over on her Instagram, and then it's back to X, and then people start discussing her content, and then people share her content. And then algorithmically, you start to see it slowly get tied together so that when you look up Charlie Kirk, you end up with what's popular at the time, which is Candace Owens's explanation for who else might have been involved.
If the truth disappears from your phone, does it still exist? A corrupted video file blinks on screen, then dies. A message flickers into view. Bro, I swear Tyler didn't shoot. I had the video, but it vanished. Another surge of static. Digital noise swallows the screen like a mouth closing on a secret. One missing file has reignited a national debate. And tonight, we're stepping into the silence it left behind. Not to point fingers, not to inflame, but to ask the question that keeps returning like a ghost in the metadata. Did the evidence vanish on its own? Or did someone need it gone? We're not here for conspiracy. We're here for clarity. And clarity demands witnesses willing to look closer, think deeper, and question the easy narrative. Brief pause, low piano note. If you believe truth should never be buried under corrupted files, you're in the right place. If you believe digital evidence should outlast digital fear, stay with us. If you believe stories like this deserve patience, not outrage, you'll want to be part of this community. If you believe the internet needs fewer loud opinions and more calm investigations, consider subscribing. And if you want to follow this case as new evidence emerges, because more is coming, subscribe now so you don't miss the next piece that surfaces. Static fades, replaced by quiet typing sounds, almost like someone trying to recover a deleted file. Tonight, we're beginning with a single unsettling truth. Something is missing from the timeline. Something that could change everything about what happened. And what didn't. Let's open the file they said no longer exists. Before the headlines, before the political noise, before the missing video became a spark in a national argument, there was just a young man named Tyler Robinson. Tyler is 22. Quiet. Kind of person friends describe as. Always in the background, never the problem. He spent most nights exactly the same way, working late, scrolling through music playlists, texting the same small circle of friends he trusted. On the night everything changed, Tyler wasn't alone. He was with 2 friends, grabbing food, trying to keep the peace in a conflict that had been simmering between local groups for weeks. A conflict that, according to multiple witnesses, had almost nothing to do with him. The alleged victim that evening, a young man from a nearby neighborhood, had his own story, his own struggles, and his own complicated connections. Their paths crossed at the wrong moment, under the wrong tension, with too many phones out and not enough clarity. We can't verify every claim made in the hours that followed, but the pattern, the timing, the messages, the missing evidence raises questions worth asking carefully, not carelessly. Messages recovered from that night paint a picture of panic rather than guilt. One friend recalled, Tyler was shaking. He kept saying, "They're blaming me for something I didn't do." Another message typed at 1:14 a.m. reads, "This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't even have a gun." As the hours passed, word spread, not just locally, but online. People began sharing fragments of the story, each more incomplete than the last. And that's when Charlie Kirk mentioned the case on his platform. Not to declare innocence, not to declare guilt, but because, in his words, the story didn't add up. Like so many moments in the digital age, political attention amplified everything. The fear, the confusion, the assumptions, and the pressure to choose a side before the facts were even clear. But here, in this space, we return to the human first. A young man overwhelmed, a victim whose life mattered, a community caught in the crossfire of truth and rumor. This is where the story truly begins, not in the moment of the incident, but in the lives of the people whose names were suddenly everywhere. Because before we can investigate the evidence, we have to understand the human beings behind it. To understand what happened the night the gun went off, we have to slow time down. Not to the minute, but to the second. At 10 hours 41 minutes and 12 seconds p.m., GPS data places Tyler and his 2 friends walking toward the parking lot. At 10 hours 41 minutes and 26 seconds, a separate phone, belonging to a witness across the street, begins recording. Its first frame shows movement, arguing, a hand raised. And then suddenly, nothing. The file ends at 10 hours 41 minutes and 29 seconds. 3 seconds. Exactly 3. And according to the device's own metadata, it should have been 11 seconds long. Another video, recorded from a different angle, shows even less. The timestamp reads 10 hours 41 minutes and 30 seconds. But the audio track is corrupted, replaced with a flat, digital buzz. Waveform analysis shows a gap, almost as if the microphone was muted at the exact moment the gun fired. Then there's the message. The one so many people have now seen screenshots of. Tyler didn't fire. I saw the dude in the hoodie. Tyler froze. Sent at 10:42 p.m. Deleted at 10:42 p.m. Recovered later through a cloud backup the sender didn't know was enabled. And still, it wasn't the only one. Several people who were there that night reported that their clips saved as corrupted files, or disappeared altogether after they were asked to hand their phones over. Just for a moment, we can't confirm whether those missing seconds were coincidence, a software glitch, a human error, or something else. But when seconds matter, when a single frame can change everything, the absence becomes louder than the evidence itself. One phone places the shooter moving away at 10 hours 41 minutes and 27 seconds. But Tyler's location tag doesn't shift until 10 hours 41 minutes and 33 seconds, 6 seconds after the shot. 6 seconds may not seem like much. But in forensic timelines, 6 seconds is the difference between involvement and being a stunned bystander trying to process a sudden burst of violence. The more we look at the digital footprint of that night, the more one question keeps returning, quietly, persistently, almost whispering between corrupted frames. Was this all coincidence? Or was it coordinated silence? We can't say. Not yet. But the patterns leave a shape in the dark, one we can trace, but not fill in. Not without the missing seconds. When the investigation began, officials released a statement that seemed simple, confident, and final. All available evidence indicates Tyler Robinson discharged the weapon. But the problem was the word available. Because when we place the official narrative beside the digital records we've examined, a different picture emerges. Not a contradiction, but a landscape full of gaps, redactions, and unanswered questions. The police report states the shooting occurred at 10:41 p.m. But multiple civilian clips timestamp the gunshot between 10 hours 41 minutes and 27 seconds and 10 hours 41 minutes and 30 seconds. A small discrepancy, until you notice that the footage used in the official timeline starts after those seconds would have passed. Several witnesses later told reporters quietly, carefully, that they were asked to delete videos or hand over their phones. Not by force, not by threat, just with the kind of urgent persuasion that makes people second-guess themselves. We can't verify every version of that claim, but the consistency between them raises eyebrows. And then there's the civilian videos, raw, shaky, unfiltered. Clips that show hands raised, shadows shifting, and at least one figure wearing a dark hoodie moving sharply to the left, at the exact moment officials say Tyler fired. None of these are definitive. None prove innocence. None prove guilt. They simply widen the investigation, instead of closing it. Media coverage only made the divide deeper. Mainstream outlets focused on the police narrative, tight, streamlined, anchored in official sources. Grassroots channels, however, highlighted what was missing: the corrupted files, the conflicting timestamps, the messages from that night that didn't align with the simple version of events. Then came the political spotlight. Charlie Kirk commented publicly, suggesting the case did not add up and deserved deeper scrutiny. Not a verdict, not a theory, just a signal flare, one that pushed the story into a national echo chamber, where every detail became amplified and every uncertainty became fuel. Through all of this, our focus remains the same. Not the noise, not the polarization, but the evidence itself, the movement of data, the holes in timelines, the strange, repeated absence of key moments. Because when official accounts and civilian footage disagree, even slightly, responsible investigation demands that we look again, not to accuse, but to understand. And the deeper we look, the more the missing seconds matter. This part breathes heavier. The incident has already happened. Now you're showing the aftershocks moving through real lives and online spaces. You guide the audience into the tension without turning it into spectacle. The community's reaction isn't a single emotion. It splits into fear, frustration, and the kind of confused silence that happens when everyone is looking at the same story but seeing something different. Some people demand answers, some point fingers, others whisper their doubts in group chats, trying to piece together what actually happened. Families on both sides sit in the middle of it, bearing the emotional fallout no headline can capture. The story is no longer just a timeline. It's a wound people are trying to interpret. A simple line folds this together. Who owns the truth once it becomes digital? Not as a slogan, but as a quiet reminder that once a story enters the algorithm, it stops belonging to the people who lived it. To match that energy, your visuals stay soft and introspective. Slow motion shots of crowds gathering, not shouting, just existing in shared uncertainty. Close-ups of hands gripping phones, scrolling through arguments and theories. Dim rooms where someone sits alone with the glow of a screen. The sound barely rises above a low ambient hum, letting the viewer feel like they're inside the quiet before another wave of discourse hits. This chapter sets up the final act by grounding the audience in the human cost, the part that always gets lost once the internet takes over, and it invites them to stay curious, instead of combative, as the story reaches its final questions. The aftermath of that night rippled far beyond the parking lot. In the streets, whispers of fear spread like wildfire. In homes, families sat in silence, trying to piece together fragments of a story they could barely comprehend. Anger simmered online in comment threads and social feeds. Questions shouted, accusations whispered, every voice claiming clarity in a story still clouded by missing evidence. Confusion took hold. People argued about what they saw and what they thought they saw. Some clutched their phones like lifelines, scrolling, replaying, screenshotting moments that might have vanished. The community watched, waiting, hoping, fearing. Because when digital evidence disappears, when seconds vanish from video and messages self-delete, it raises a question heavier than any headline. Who owns the truth once it becomes digital? And in the quiet, the families endured the hardest burden. Not knowing, not being believed, not seeing an ending. Yet, through fear and outrage, through arguments and uncertainty, a quiet determination emerged to look closer, to ask questions, to demand accountability, not for clicks,